Okay.
Hi,
Introduce about
my
yourself.
name oh, my name is Akhil Shanmugaja. I'm a student of Aathreya Academy, and this presentation is for the Department of Asian Music. I'm from the United States of America, and yeah,
What is your presentation topic?
my presentation is about the Sangote yar. So it's a branch of an instrument called a yar. So it's one of the types of yar, which is a South Indian instrument.
All right. Go ahead.
So first, what is a yar? So a yar is kind of the what a harp originated from. AR is the first ever like instrument similar to a harp that came into existence, and it was used. It's used. It was at the time used primarily for Tamil music, for like devotional purposes or for like vocalists for support for them. So the earliest scriptures of the yar was found in the second century BCE, when a sculpting of a woman playing it was found in Bharat, and this was the earliest known visual representation of the yar. And after it became once it became very popular among like India and the surrounding countries, it was heavily produced in Sri Lanka actually. Like for example, the Sanghatiyar was one of the main production like its main production site was in Sri Lanka. And the majority of the yars they were created using woods and gut strings. So for the actual foundation of the harp or the yar, the foundation was made using wood, and then the strings which you would strum would be made from gut strings. So for the pictures on the top right, you can see a wooden gut string yard. So this is an exact model, but it's kind of a replica. So the wood is kind of the arcing rim, and then the string is the middle section of it. And at the older version, it was a gut string. And in the bottom right is a barred sculpture of the actual yard. So this is a woman playing what resembles a yard, and this was a very old sculpture found like tens of thousands of years ago. So this is one of the earliest resemblances found. So how is the yard made? So for Sengote yard, the dimensions are the width isn't clearly specified, but for the height, it was generally around 1 and 3 feet tall. And for the width, it was more of a drum, so like a drum type um shape. So the exact width was based on the intensity and the deepness of the drum that you wanted to use. And the more deeper or wider it was, the deeper sound the drum would give you. So earlier on, when the yar was first produced thousands of years ago, the strings were made from goat intestine instead of gut strings. And the thickness of the individual string determined the note level, like how high a note would be, what octave it would be in, or how low it would be in the lower octave it would be in. So the bottom soundboard, which kind of surrounds the drum, was made of goat skin. So as you can see, the majority of the yar was, besides the wooden aspect of it, the majority of it was made by like a goat, which is a very common animal found in India and Sri Lanka. So the yar was tuned. There's kind of mini tuning, like not tuning bells like modern days, but there's a little like string the end of it where you can twist it, and that kind of tunes the exact scale that you would want. And at the time, majority of people they would just vocal twist it so someone would sing a note, and then they'd try matching it with the yar. So different yars have different numbers of strings because each yar was a different purpose. Like some yars are specifically for like accompanying musicians. So it'd be more of like a more mellow, relaxed, lighter like sound, while some had really vibrant and intense sounds. So the Sangwa yar had only seven, like not only, but they had seven strings, which is not the lowest amount of strings, but not the highest amount either. So it was kind of in the middle when it came to the amount of strings they had. So on the top right, you can see the image of a yar. So this is kind of the shape that many modern day yars have. So it's kind of an arc shape with generally an animal on the top. So that in yars in general, there's fish-shaped yars, and then there's peacocks. So a lot of it was based on animals that were really famous in India and Sri Lanka. As for example, fish are represent their jobs. They're like fishermen, and the peacock's the national animal of India. So each animal had a big representation of the people who were playing it. So then how to play. So the information I got on how to play was found from Purunara to Pare, which is a river poem from Karikal Vallavan, who is a Chola Empire king. So this is a kingdom in Tamil Nadu, like around the Tamil Nadu area, like thousands of years ago. So according to this poem, there were he defined two ways to play the Sengwatayar. So one was just stroking with the index finger, And the second way, which is for more preciseness and exactness, was using the thumb and the index finger. So as you can see, the person on the top right, he's using his thumb as support and then using his index finger to play the specific string he would like. So on the according to the poem, it's very clear about the way you should, like the manner you should play this Sengote art in. So it says very gently but strongly. So the point of this is so the note is distinguished and you can really hear the note, but you don't actually damage the string or so it doesn't snap off.
So you're
So
trying
for
to
this
convey that's a Sengote yar. What is that image? What type of yar he's playing?
this is a Perrier, so this is one of the this is the year that has one of the most strings. So this is like 15 to 20 strings. So
Hmm.
this is it's not exactly this year. I just want to show an example of the way to play it. So you can see a microphone. The fish shape generally resembles a Perrier. So it's like 15 to 20 strings. It's one of the larger strings.
Okay, you are saying it's Periyar, right? Then what is Makara
Yeah.
yar?
I'll go on that later on in my slideshow.
Okay.
And then so for the Sengotear specifically, the Sengotear had a very vibrant sound and it was used more for accompaniment for other music. So it wasn't generally found for solo purposes, but it was more or less used like as someone would sing or play more specific instrument like a vine or an accordion, it would kind of accompany that sound. So the types of yars, there's many different types of yars. There's tens, 20s types of yars, but the main yars that I'll go over in this presentation are the Sakote yar, the Makara yar, the Sengote yar, and the Adi yar. So the difference is each yar is a different number of strings, and this leads to different ranges of notes and preciseness. They have similar builds, but some of them represent different animals. And like for example, the Mail yar is a type of yar which resembles a peacock, and the Vil yar is a yar that resembles a bow. So each yar, besides having different strings and notes, they'd also have different designs to kind of help people distinguish them. So like on the top right, these aren't the exact yards that I mentioned here, but you can see on the top left, that one's a berry yard, and you can see how it's similar to shape as a picture earlier. And then the second one is the mucker yard, and it's kind of blurry, but as I go into the specificality of each yard, it'll kind of be more specific. So in this one, there's over 9 different types, and but these are all like primary and secondary types. So I'll go over the main 4 in this slideshow. So this is a mucker yar. So this is a type of yar resembling a fish, and this is more of a design. This is a yar that is resembles more the design. So the reason this is called a mucker yar is this is the main yar that was used in Sri Lanka, and the majority of people who live in Sri Lanka are fishermen. So they use this mucker yar to kind of define themselves as a way of kind of representing the people who played it. And as it that's why they designed it as a fish to kind of represent their job and their identity in at the time. So this yar was made from like modern day, like not modern day, since it's an extinct instrument, but like the last trace of it found were generally made from wood and steel, and there were 19 wooden pegs with strings tied in between them. So then these are used as melodic strings to support vocalists as well. And the actual meaning behind the word makara means legendary sea creature, which is a Hindu term, and it kind of resembles why it's a fish. So in general, this was more of like a type of yar which resembles sea creatures and like other legendary beings according to Hindu mythology. So the next one is a Sakrita yar, and this yar is on another different type of yar, similar to the Makara yar has 14 strings, but to be more specific, they had 4 strings tuned in a lower octave, 7 in a mid octave, and 3 in a higher octave. So as you can see, there's like a heavy emphasis on the middle octave, since the middle octave is where the majority of pieces are played, and it had 4 in lower and 3 in higher, so around the same, but like a lesser amount on each higher and lower octave. And this is a smaller version of the Barrier, which is obviously the same thing, but bigger with more intensity, more strings, a bigger drum, etc. So the actual design for the Secretary was like a boat-shaped pattern, which you can see on the bottom is kind of shaped like an oar, like where how you row a boat. And the bottom kind of resembles the actual seating of a boat. And the actual yard is closed with leather, which is found from like it was either cow leather or many different animals that were able to produce leather that was found in India. And the bottom right is an image of 2 different Sabotayars, which, as you can see, there's wooden pegs in the middle of the actual design of it. And the bottom is the part which kind of resembles the boat-shaped platter. And yeah, and then you can see on the top with that different colors, that's like the leather aspect of the actual yard, and that's what closes the drum, so there's no hole in the yard. So the odd yard, there's no actual resemblance, like historic, like proof that this existed. But according to Hindu mythology, this is one of the most important yars, as it was the first yar ever, according to mythology. So this was very significant as it was used to win over the Asuras in a major battle, according to Hindu mythology, during the Treta Yuga, which is a time in Hindu mythology approximately, I believe, 1,296,000 years ago. And according to legend, it was a massive war, and this yar was at one like the key instruments used during the war, and it was like when the Asuras were defeated in this war, it was kind of like the victory instrument used for it. And for the actual dimensions, though it seems unrealistic, the actual mythology states that the yar had over 1,000 strings and 200 different octaves. So it's basically what these yars are, but magnified to a massive amount. So we can see how different, like, and more extreme that the Adi yar is in comparison to the other yars. So for the yar, though the yar is an extinct instrument, there's many people who have played it in the past and many people who are currently playing it to bring its relevance back into the modern world. So Panapatir was one of the oldest people who played it back thousands of years ago. And he primarily played in the Madurai Meenakshi Amman temple, which is found in Tamil Nadu. And he used this as for devotional purposes. So when people came to Greek gods, they kind of felt in a spiritual peace of mind. And in modern day, Tarun Shekhar, he is one of the main people who's like bringing the awareness behind Yar across the world. He devotes his time to discovering, like one of his main jobs is to kind of discover ancient instruments that have been lost as gone on. And he's gonna try bringing it back and like show how significant this instrument was and how important it was to the society at the time. So he has gone to a lot of different museums in like Britain and a lot of countries in Europe, and he's kind of helped people there understand about the art. And like it's been a lot of exhibits at the museums. So he's really doing a good job in kind of bringing the yard back into the world today. So, and then this is the final slide, and then this is just to show you what the yard sounds like. And yeah, and so the audio is not there. I'll just share the audio real quick. Okay, so yeah, so this is the actual yard song. So those are the wooden pegs that you can see, and that's the leather putting up here. And then you can see that this yard is actually a mile yard. So yeah, you can see the peacock design based on it. So yeah, overall, this was a presentation on the yard and the significance it had in the South Indian, like the Tamil community and in Sri Lanka. So this for the specific yard that was covered is a Sengote yard, but I went over each yard specifically and each purpose. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Mute रखिए, mute रखिए.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay. So can I ask you some question based on this presentation?
yeah,
Okay. So I hope you got some researching idea based on this ER, right?
yeah,
You did research, right? So tell
yeah.
me the difference between the Adiyar and the Makarayar.
So the Adiyar, as like I was kind of talking about earlier, it was 1,000. It had over 1,000 strings and 200 different octaves. So this kind of because it had so many strings and octaves in order to support it, it had a much bigger drum surrounding it. So there wasn't as much emphasis on the actual like animal design of it, but it was very wide and like so much like on it at the time multiple people would use it since it had so many strings. And the Makarayar was more like my one of the handheld DR. It only had like 20 different strings, and it was actually I didn't go over it much, but it's kind of the smaller version of a Perrier. So it has the same design, but a smaller, compacted version of it.
Okay, so if you're saying the 1,000 string instrument with the 200 different octave, in the sense, how many swaras we can able to play in the yard?
The exact number, I'm not sure. It didn't come across, but given there's over 200 different octaves, there's probably at least 1,500 different like specific scores that you can play with the actual instrument, since there's over 1,000 strings and 200 octaves.
All right. So can you tell me the improvisation versions in the yard? So nowadays, how the yard is using in westernized culture.
So nowadays, in westernized culture, the R is kind of it's like been replaced by like the harp. So the harp in the Western, like the US or like other Western countries in Europe, it's mainly used as an accompaniment or like for any like classical music or more like peaceful music. It's kind of there to like kind of like calm for like a purpose of calmness and like kind of if there's an intense music piece, it kind of there to slow it down and like tempo setter for
Any
music.
different kind, any two different kinds of harp? You know about that?
I don't know two exact different versions of a harp, but there's many different, like similar to yaw, there's many different strings for harp. There's no drum on a harp, but there's many different strings and like heights designs.
Okay. So what skin used in the harp? I mean the yard.
The yar, it's mainly used with goat skin. Like the actual design of it was wood, but like the strings and the drums were goat skin and other leather from like cows and goats. So it was
Okay.
heavily used by animals, similar to many instruments in India at the time.
Which is the wood perfect wood used for the to prepare the yard?
The wood, the main wood, pretty sure I went over it, but it was more like synthetic, not synthetic, I'm sorry. But more like wood crafted like from based on specificality and it kind of depended based on what each city or town had accessible to them. And like the wood wasn't the main like factor since the wood was more the foundation so that it wouldn't break. But the actual like performance of the yar was based on the type of string used and the type of drum and like the makeup of the drum.
To produce the proper sound in the yard, we need to focus on the wood or string.
Yeah. We need to focus on the strings since the strings what actually produces the sound. So like the strings and the drums are the main foundational aspect of it. So as long as the string was a good, so that the string was like stronger and more delicate, so it'd play the as good of a sound as possible. And since it connected to the drum, you had to make sure that the drum was also like not very flimsy or it had to be very carefully made
So,
so that
so you are conveying the wood is not necessary, like the
what's necessary, like what's more like the foundation aspect of it. Sorry if I meant it like that. But like for the actual playing of it, the strings like the key part, and the wood's there just to kind of hold in place the entire yard. Because without the wood, the yard would just fall apart.
so yeah, that's fine. So and can you say the difference between these Veena and yard?
So the vina, as like the vina, like a westernized comparison of it would be like a violin or like a sitar or anything like that. So the vina was more like it had like a different structure, it had a bow structure, and then it has more curves and it's like more of an intricate design. And like a vina could be played like without an accompaniment, like it could just be played as itself. While the yar was mainly used for accompanying, like for example, yar would accompany a vina in like devotional purposes. So the vina is more of like, though they both use strings, the vina is more of like a main instrument and like a melody-inducing instrument, while the yar is more there as like a side.
Okay. So if you see the Simhamukha yard, there is a says like lion, lion face
Yeah,
in the yard, right? So in the same structure, you can able to see in the Veena. So what do you think? The both are the Veena comes from yard or yard comes from Veena? So what do you think?
I'd say that since they both have like similar designs and like similar animal designs, I'd say that like they were probably manufactured or like produced in like around the same area of the world. So like in India, like maybe like specific like South India specific areas. And since they each had lions, like I kind of think it shows like the value that lions had in this, just like how much they were perceived to like their social class or like the animal value in the society. And since they're both the same thing, I'd say that they were found around the same time period, and it kind of shows like the connection that ancient music had in India.
Okay. So like can you explain technically how yard produce the sound by the by playing the yard, it produces the sound through the skin's vibration or
Yeah.
any other sound.
So when you play this string, as the string was connected to the drum, and whenever you strung the string, the string, since it's connected to the drum would also kind of shake, like the leather's top of it would shake. And since like the main point of a drum, when you hit it, the sound bounces back up, and that's what produces the sound. So when you hit the string, given it's connected to the drum, the bounces back up, and the string, and like based on the how big the string is and the thinness, that changes the note and transposes it based on how the string is.
That's good. So, for example, the last question: how to adjust the pitch in yard?
So in the yard, the actual wooden pegs you can kind of shift and like change, so that would make the string more like stretched out more or more like together. So based
Mhm.
on this, like for example, if you stretch out a string more and more, like it's harder to play, but when you play the note, it's going to sound very high pitched. And since the string's very thinner and like stretched out more, so they wouldn't have like an exact tuner like we do in modern days. They'd either use ear training to do it, or they just take and turn the peg based on what they want.
Is it possible to do glidings in yard?
In the yard, either you, for the closest you can get to gliding is either by using multiple strings at once. So by using multiple strings at once, you get a sound that's kind of mixed between both of them. But
Like in
in
the gliding
exact
means I'm just asking like gamakas and brigas.
for gliding, I don't think there'd be an exact version of a gamaka in a yard, but like given that there's multiple strings, you can kind of use two specific strings, for example, and like focus on one string and kind of tie in lightly another string at the end to kind of give more of a variation to the note.
Okay. Overall, it's a good presentation, Akhil. So we'll let you know the marks and the final results as soon as possible. Thank you.